Hi there. That evening, when the office was almost empty and everyone was heading home, she decided to stay a little longer, just to finish some paperwork and gather her thoughts in the quiet. Suddenly, right in the middle of a romantic moment with her colleague, when they finally allowed themselves a bit more than just glances and hints, the door swung open without warning. But before you get comfortable, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I'm always curious to see who's joined us. Now, get cozy, we're starting. Amber had always been the kind of woman who drew attention, even when she didn't try. At 25, she carried herself with effortless grace. Her slender waist and curvy hips made her dresses hug her body in just the right way. That Monday morning, she wore a soft pink, lace-trimmed lingerie set beneath a fitted pastel dress. Her long, light blonde hair tumbled in loose waves down her back, framing a face with bright, expressive blue eyes and lips full of unspoken questions. Her husband, Mark, was everything the modern world admired. Tall, athletic, with sharply defined features and a calm confidence in the way he moved. His dark, cropped hair and clean-cut style always made Amber feel proud. But lately, their shared moments felt fleeting, caught between late-night work calls and half-finished conversations over coffee. At the office, everything seemed brighter, faster. Glass walls shimmered in the morning sun, and laughter bounced around the open workspace. Amber's colleagues were just as striking as the city skyline outside. Julia, a tall brunette with a sharp bob and emerald eyes, favored tailored navy suits that accentuated her lean frame. Mia, the petite raven-haired assistant, loved her tight pencil skirts and crisp white blouses, her petite bust and slim legs, giving her a dancer's poise. But it was Ryan, her manager, who made Amber's pulse quicken. He was in his mid-30s, with broad shoulders and sandy hair always slightly tousled, eyes a piercing blue. His presence filled the room, the lines of his suit sharp and precise, every movement deliberate. The morning drifted into a blur of emails and meetings. It wasn't until lunch that Amber found herself alone with Ryan at the coffee machine. He reached for a mug just as she did, their hands brushing, a spark leaping between them. For a heartbeat, their eyes locked. Ryan's fingers lingered on Amber's, warmth traveling up her arm. The conversation faded into the background. There was only the sound of their breathing, the flutter of anticipation. In that moment, Amber could not help but imagine what it would be like if he closed the space between them. If his hand slid around her waist, drawing her close. The thought made her skin tingle, and she found herself hoping he noticed the soft outline of her dress, the delicate lace beneath. They pulled away, faces flushed with more than just caffeine. Amber tried to steady her voice as they returned to their desks, but the echo of that touch lingered. At home that night, Mark was tired, preoccupied. He kissed Amber's cheek, barely noticing the new dress or the effort she had put into her makeup. She lay awake, thinking about the way Ryan had looked at her, the way his gaze had lingered at the curve of her hip as she reached for her coffee. Her thoughts drifted back to the feeling of his hand on hers, the tension that simmered just below the surface. Was she imagining things, or had Ryan felt it too? Amber didn't have an answer, but she knew one thing. She would see him again tomorrow, and part of her was already counting the hours. The days grew brighter as spring tiptoed through the city, and for Amber the air in the office felt thick, with something electric and unspoken. She started noticing the little details. The way Ryan always managed to be near her during meetings. The way his voice softened when he said her name. The occasional, almost imperceptible brush of his hand against her back as they squeezed past each other in the busy corridors. Amber was not the only beautiful woman at the office, and she knew it. Julia, with her tall frame and sharp style, always seemed to command the attention of their male colleagues. Her navy blazer accentuated her narrow waist and slim hips, and when she smiled, there was a flicker of mischief in her emerald eyes. Then there was Mia, always smiling, her dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. A silver chain, glinting just above the soft curve of her collarbone. Mia preferred fitted skirts and elegant blouses, her petite bust and toned legs giving her a natural elegance. Today, she wore a silky white blouse and a deep green pencil skirt that hugged her small hips. Despite all the beauty swirling around her, Amber could not help but feel as if Ryan saw only her. Lunch hours became their private ritual. Sometimes they would step out to a small cafe. Other times they would linger at the window with coffee, exchanging glances that grew more daring with each day. Amber found herself dressing with Ryan in mind, choosing her favorite lacy bras and matching panties, sheer enough to hint at, but never reveal the soft fullness of her breasts, the gentle curve of her body. She knew he noticed. She could feel it in the heat of his gaze. The weeks passed in a hush of anticipation. Mark grew more distant at home, lost in work, his mind drifting elsewhere. Amber tried to reach out, cooking his favorite meals, wearing his favorite perfume. But he always seemed tired, distracted. Some nights, they barely spoke at all. It hurt. But Amber buried the ache, pouring herself into the rush of her days at work. One Friday evening, after a company celebration, Amber and Ryan found themselves alone in the lobby as everyone else trickled out. The city glowed beyond the glass doors, a patchwork of lights. Ryan asked if she wanted to walk with him a little before heading home. The night air was cool, tinged with the scent of blooming trees. Their steps were slow, words coming more freely as they walked beneath the street lamps. They laughed about silly office stories, shared secrets about their childhoods, and before she knew it, Amber felt as if she had known Ryan forever. They paused beneath a sprawling oak tree, the golden halo of a lamp casting patterns on the sidewalk. Ryan turned to face her, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Amber felt her heart thud so loudly she was sure he could hear it. Then, gently, Ryan reached up and tucked a loose strand of hair behind Amber's ear. His touch lingered on her cheek, tracing the delicate line of her jaw. Their eyes met, breath mingling in the cool night. Amber felt herself sway closer, drawn by something she could not name. Their lips met, soft, tentative at first, then deepening, searching. Ryan's hands slid around her waist, pulling her closer, his fingers pressing into the small of her back. Amber's hands found the strong curve of his shoulders, and she melted against him, feeling the warmth of his body through the thin fabric of her dress. The kiss sent shivers down her spine, the tension of so many days pouring into that single hungry moment. They broke apart only when a car passed, headlights flickering over them. But even then, their hands remained intertwined, reluctant to let go. Amber's cheeks burned as they walked back to the office, silent but smiling. Ryan touched her hand before she slipped away to call a cab, his thumb tracing circles over her knuckles. That night, lying awake in bed, Amber replayed every second. She felt the ghost of Ryan's lips on her own, the gentle pressure of his hands on her waist. When Mark came home late, he barely looked at her, mumbling a tired greeting before falling asleep. Amber stared at the ceiling, heart pounding with guilt and excitement. At work the next day, Amber and Ryan shared secret smiles and stolen glances. The office hummed with its usual rhythm, but for them, something had changed. An invisible thread now tied them together, impossible to ignore. Yet Amber felt the first whisper of fear. She loved the thrill, the attention, the way Ryan made her feel desired and alive. But she also knew she was straying into dangerous territory. The boundaries between right and wrong were blurring, and she wondered just how far she would go before she lost herself completely. She could not help but look forward to Monday. Monday arrived with the promise of rain, casting the city in a silver glow. Amber chose her outfit with trembling hands. A fitted cream blouse, its soft fabric just sheer enough to hint at the blush of her lace bra underneath, paired with a navy skirt that clung to her curves. She felt alive, every nerve on edge. Her long blonde hair was swept to one side, falling over her shoulder in loose waves. As she finished her makeup, Amber glanced at herself in the mirror, searching for signs of guilt or doubt. There were none. Only a quiet, dangerous excitement. In the office, there was an unexpected buzz. Word had spread that a new assistant was joining the team. When the elevator door slid open, Amber could feel every head turn. The newcomer, Haley, was stunning. She wore a slim white dress with an open back. Her golden hair curled in perfect waves, framing a face with glacial blue eyes and a confident smile. Her figure was a masterpiece of contrast. Narrow waist, round hips, and a perky chest that the soft fabric of her dress seemed to celebrate rather than conceal. For a fleeting moment, Amber felt a twist of jealousy. Irrational, maybe, but sharp. The men in the office were clearly enchanted, and even Julia shot the new girl a quick, measuring look. Amber felt strangely protective of the attention she had been receiving from Ryan. Was it really so easy for someone else to walk in and take it? The day moved quickly, Amber and Ryan exchanging more than just glances. At lunchtime, they lingered in a quiet alcove, hidden from prying eyes. Ryan's hand brushed Amber's lower back, sending heat coursing through her body. She tried to focus on the conversation, but her mind was a swirl of memories and longing. By late afternoon, as rain pattered against the windows, something unexpected happened. Mark appeared at the office, carrying a small bouquet of white lilies, Amber's favorite. He wore a tired but hopeful smile, his suit jacket rumpled from a long day. Amber's heart skipped. She had not expected him. Her colleagues greeted Mark warmly. Mia flashed her a knowing grin, and Haley, not yet familiar with the dynamics, introduced herself with a charming handshake. Mark's eyes lingered on Amber's outfit, then shifted, just for a second, to Ryan, who stood a little too close. The air between the three of them tightened, an invisible string pulled taut. Ryan, ever the professional, offered a polite greeting, but there was a flicker in his eyes, a mix of surprise and something more unreadable. Mark suggested they step into a meeting room just to catch up, he said. Amber's pulse pounded in her ears. As she excused herself from her colleagues, she caught Haley watching, curiosity lighting up her face. The small room felt suddenly too small. Mark closed the door, set the flowers on the table, and turned to Amber, searching her face. There was something new in his expression, a question he was afraid to ask. Amber, is everything all right between us? His voice was gentle, but the ache beneath it was plain. Before she could answer, the door opened abruptly. Ryan, holding a file, stepped in, eyes widening as he realized the tension in the room. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt." Mark hesitated, but before anyone could speak, Mia called for Ryan from down the hall, rescuing them all from the mounting pressure. He gave Amber a lingering look before slipping out. Amber's heart thudded with confusion. Mark was trying, she could see that, but it was as if a chasm had opened between them. She picked up the lilies, breathed in their fragrance, and blinked away the sting of tears. Later that evening, long after everyone had left, Amber wandered back into the office. She sat at her desk, staring at the rain sliding down the glass. The office was quiet, except for the echo of her thoughts. Suddenly, she felt someone behind her. She turned to see Ryan, eyes shadowed in the dim light. He stepped closer, and without a word, brushed his fingers gently through her hair. Amber closed her eyes as his touch traced the curve of her neck. He leaned in, pressing a soft, lingering kiss just below her ear. She shivered, every nerve alive. Ryan's hand slid to her waist, drawing her against him, her back pressed to his chest. For a moment, she let herself forget everything else. The doubts, the fear, the guilt, and simply melted into the warmth of his embrace. His lips trailed along her jaw, his breath warm and urgent. But when his hand found hers, she pulled away, heart racing. The reality of her choices crashed over her, raw and undeniable. Amber grabbed her bag, whispered a shaky goodbye, and hurried out into the rainy night. But as she left, she glanced back and caught a glimpse of movement, a shadow by the kitchen doorway. For a moment, she thought it was just her imagination, but the sensation of being watched lingered, sending a chill down her spine. That night, as Amber lay beside Mark, his steady breathing a world away from her storm, she wondered if she had crossed a line she could never uncross. The memory of Ryan's lips on her skin warred with the haunting feeling that nothing in her world was as private as she believed. And somewhere in the quiet, a new kind of fear began to take root. Amber felt the atmosphere in the office shift over the next days, though nothing seemed to change outwardly. The casual laughter at the coffee machine was still there. The hum of computers and low conversations still filled the air, but a sense of tension pulsed beneath the surface. Amber caught herself glancing over her shoulder more often, watching for shadows that might not have been there before. The first anonymous message arrived late Tuesday morning. It was a simple note, slipped under her keyboard while she was away in a meeting. Secrets have a way of getting out. Amber's heart thudded as she looked around. No one met her gaze. Julia was typing quickly at her desk. Mia was on the phone. Haley stood chatting with two of the junior analysts by the window. Was it a joke? An accident? Or did someone really know? That afternoon, Amber found herself studying her colleagues more closely. Julia's gaze was as steady as ever, her slender figure relaxed in her chair, emerald eyes flicking up only to answer an email. Haley seemed preoccupied with her own tasks, her white dress immaculate, her blue eyes flashing when she laughed. Even Mia, usually so easy to read, wore a faintly distracted smile, adjusting the silver chain on her neck. Amber told herself she was being paranoid. Yet the next day, another note appeared in her purse. This one written in the same blocky handwriting, "Careful, eyes are everywhere." The warning sent a shiver up her spine. For the first time, Amber felt out of place in the office she'd once loved. She grew quiet, uncertain who to trust. Even Ryan seemed distant, his eyes lingering on her with concern when he thought no one was looking. But otherwise careful, reserved. Mark at home had begun to sense her distraction. He asked gentle questions, made small efforts. Dinner, a bouquet of sunflowers, a walk through the park. Amber smiled and responded. But her mind was elsewhere, haunted by the mysterious notes and the creeping sense of exposure. That Friday, Amber stayed late at the office, hoping to find some peace in the empty building. The rain had returned, tapping out a nervous rhythm against the windows. She tried to focus on her work, but every shadow seemed to grow larger, every sound louder. She rose to stretch, glancing at her reflection in the dark glass. Her cream blouse and navy skirt still neat, her hair cascading over one shoulder, blue eyes bright but weary. For a moment, she saw herself as someone else might. Beautiful, yes, but troubled, her confidence shaken. She heard footsteps and froze, heart pounding. The footsteps stopped just outside her door. Ryan stepped in, a gentle concern in his eyes. Without a word, he closed the door softly behind him. Amber stood still as he crossed the room. He reached out, his fingers brushing hers, and for a moment all the fear melted away. Their hands intertwined. Ryan drew her close, holding her against him, his touch both comforting and electric. Amber felt his breath on her neck, his lips tracing a line down her jaw. She closed her eyes, surrendering to the warmth of his embrace. The quiet office faded around them. All that mattered was the closeness, the unspoken longing. His hands slid to her waist, holding her tight. Amber let herself be vulnerable, wishing she could freeze this moment of quiet connection and shelter it from the world outside. But just as their lips met, a sudden sound jolted them. A loud clatter from the hallway, sharp and unmistakable. Amber jumped back, pulse racing. Ryan opened the door and peered out, but the hall was empty. Someone had been there. Someone had seen. Amber's legs shook as she gathered her things. Ryan touched her shoulder, concern etched on his face. But she shook her head, unwilling to say more. As she left the office, Amber's mind spun with questions. Who was watching them? Was it Julia, with her watchful green eyes? Haley, with her too perfect smile? Or someone else entirely, hiding behind polite greetings and friendly chatter? The next morning, another message appeared, this time in Amber's personal email. Be careful who you trust. There was no sender, no trace. Amber's skin prickled. The mystery was growing, and the walls around her private life felt thinner every day. That weekend, Mark suggested a getaway, sensing her anxiety. They drove out of the city to a small lakeside cabin. The peace and quiet brought Amber a measure of calm, but her mind kept drifting back to the shadows in the office, the messages, and the feeling that the truth was closing in around her. Even as Mark wrapped his arms around her that night, holding her close by the fire, Amber could not shake the sense that her secrets were not hers alone anymore. The lines between love and longing, trust and suspicion, grew blurrier with every passing day. And somewhere, someone was watching, waiting to reveal everything Amber fought to keep hidden. The tension followed Amber into the next week, heavy and constant as a storm cloud. Each day at the office felt longer. Her nerves stretched thin. Her colleagues seemed unchanged on the surface, but Amber sensed the undercurrents. Julia, ever poised in her navy suit and matching heels, was polite but distant. Mia, in her floral skirt and fitted blouse, offered kind smiles that felt just a touch too careful. Even Haley, the golden-haired newcomer in her powder blue dress, seemed to watch Amber with a quiet curiosity. Amber felt alone in a room full of people. Mark, too, had grown restless. He noticed the change in Amber, though she did her best to hide it. He asked her about work, her friends, if anything was wrong. She always smiled and deflected. But late at night, as they lay side by side in the dark, the silence between them became its own kind of answer. On Wednesday, Amber found another anonymous message, slipped into her coat pocket. "Does your husband know?" Her heart lurched. The words echoed in her mind all day. That afternoon, she noticed Mark's name appear on her phone. A message. A simple, "I miss you." Guilt burned in her chest. Amber went home early, hoping to find comfort, but instead found Mark waiting for her in the kitchen, his face grave. "We need to talk," he said softly. He reached for her hands, his dark eyes searching hers. Amber's world spun. "Mark, what is it?" He hesitated, then spoke, his voice trembling. "Amber, I love you, but lately, you're distant. You're not here. Is there someone else?" The question, spoken aloud, shattered the fragile peace between them. Amber's breath caught. She looked away, tears burning in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered, unable to say more. Mark closed his eyes, struggling with the truth. "Is it Ryan?" The name hung between them like a weapon. Amber nodded, barely, and Mark's shoulders sagged, as if he had aged in an instant. For a long time, neither spoke. The kitchen clock ticked, loud and relentless. The next day at work, the tension was unbearable. Amber tried to avoid Ryan, but he caught up to her in the hallway, concern etched on his face. He touched her arm gently. "Are you all right?" Before Amber could answer, Haley appeared, her blue eyes sharp. "Everything okay here?" Her tone was innocent, but Amber caught the hint of something else. A subtle challenge. Later, as Amber sat alone in the break room, Julia entered, closing the door behind her. She stood by the window, arms crossed. "Amber, whatever is going on, you need to be careful. People talk." Amber felt her face flush. "Julia, what are you—" Julia shook her head. "Just trust me. This office isn't as private as you think." A wave of panic washed over Amber. She realized that even her closest friends might not be as loyal as she believed. That evening, after everyone had gone, Amber retreated to the quiet corner of the office where she and Ryan had first shared coffee. She needed clarity, or at least comfort. The city lights blinked beyond the glass as she stared into the night. Suddenly, Ryan was there, his presence grounding her. He sat beside her in silence, then gently brushed her hair from her face. Amber turned to him, her guard crumbling. his arms wrapped around her, holding her close. Their lips met, soft and seeking. And for a few precious moments, Amber let herself forget the world. Ryan's touch was tender, his hands tracing the curve of her waist, his fingers weaving through her hair, his breath warm against her skin. She clung to him, desperate for reassurance, needing to feel wanted. In his embrace, she found a fleeting sense of peace, even as guilt pressed at the edges of her mind. They parted quietly, sadness in their eyes. Amber gathered her things and left the office, feeling the weight of the choices she had made. At home, Mark waited in the living room, sitting in the shadows. When Amber entered, he stood, his face pale and determined. "I want the truth," he said, his voice steady but strained. "All of it." Amber nodded, wiping tears from her cheeks. She sat beside him, her voice trembling as she spoke. She told him everything, about the messages, about Ryan, about the confusion and loneliness that had led her here. Mark listened in silence, his jaw clenched, eyes shining. When she finished, he said only, "Thank you for being honest. I just needed to know." Amber reached for his hand, and to her surprise, he did not pull away. They sat together, both uncertain of the future, but finally free of secrets, at least between themselves. The storm had broken. Now, all that remained was what would come after. The weekend brought a strange, heavy quiet to Amber's world. At home, she and Mark existed in a kind of fragile truce, sharing breakfast at the kitchen table, speaking in gentle voices. He listened more now, and Amber found herself wishing things had never drifted so far. Yet beneath the calm, she knew something had to change. On Sunday night, a new message arrived. This time, not hidden, but brazenly sent to her work email. "Monday, conference room, noon. The truth comes out." Amber's hands shook as she read it. The game was over. Someone wanted everything out in the open. Monday dawned grey and restless. Amber dressed with care, choosing a simple pale blue blouse and a flowing black skirt, her favorite lace lingerie hidden beneath, just enough to give her a shred of confidence. Her long blonde hair framed her face, which was pale but determined. She looked at herself in the mirror, taking a deep breath, and walked out the door. At the office, the tension was palpable. Julia, in a crisp white suit, greeted Amber with a serious nod. Mia, ever gentle, squeezed her hand as she passed. Even Haley, in her sky blue dress and high ponytail, watched her with narrowed eyes. Noon came. Amber entered the conferences room, her heart pounding. To her surprise, everyone from her team was there. Ryan, Julia, Mia, Haley, and 2 other colleagues from accounting. On the table, a stack of printed emails and handwritten notes sat waiting. Haley stood at the head of the table, her blue eyes icy. "I called this meeting," she announced, her voice steady. "Someone here has been spreading rumors and sending threats." She looked straight at Amber, then at Ryan. Julia stepped forward. "It wasn't Amber or Ryan, it was me." Her voice was calm, but her eyes flickered with regret. "I saw what was happening. I was jealous. I thought if I exposed Amber, maybe people would stop looking at me like I was invisible." Murmurs rippled around the room. Amber felt the weight lift from her chest. Relief, shock, and sadness all at once. She had been wrong about Haley, wrong about everyone. She caught Ryan's eye. His relief mirrored her own. Julia lowered her gaze. "I'm sorry, Amber. I never meant for things to go so far. I was lonely, and I let that get the better of my getting." Ryan spoke up. "We all make mistakes, but we need to respect each other's privacy and trust." Haley looked at Julia with a new understanding, her expression softening. "It's over now. Let's put this behind us." After the meeting, Amber and Ryan found themselves alone in the quiet hallway. Ryan touched Amber's hand, his expression gentle. She leaned into him, their bodies close but restrained. The world outside seemed slow as he pressed a soft kiss to her forehead, his hands caressing her shoulders, drawing her into a lingering embrace. For a moment, Amber let herself sink into the warmth, cherishing the tenderness and forgiveness in his touch. There was longing in their eyes, but also acceptance, a silent agreement that this chapter had ended. Amber walked back to her desk, her thoughts a whirl of emotion, pain, relief, hope. Julia sent her a quiet message. "Thank you for understanding." Amber replied with a simple, honest, "Take care." That evening, Amber arrived home to find Mark in the living room, a suitcase beside him. She braced herself for heartbreak, but Mark looked up and smiled, tired, genuine. "I thought maybe we should get away for a while. Just the two of us. Try again." Amber's heart fluttered. She nodded, tears shining in her eyes. "I'd like that." They packed lightly and drove to the coast, leaving the city's chaos behind. In the soft glow of sunset, walking barefoot along the shore, Amber felt the first stirrings of hope. She and Mark talked, really talked, for the first time in months. They laughed, argued, and forgave. Amber realized that the person she had wanted to find was not Ryan, or even herself alone, but the connection she and Mark had let slip away. That night in the cozy hotel room, Amber slipped into a silk camisole, the soft fabric brushing her skin. Mark reached for her, his touch gentle but insistent, and she surrendered to his embrace. Their kisses were slow and rediscovering, hands learning each other anew. There was no rush, no guilt, just the warmth of a love returning. Amber closed her eyes, letting herself be held, letting herself believe in second chances. In the morning, as the sun painted the ocean gold, Amber watched Mark sleep, his hand resting on her hip. She smiled, a gentle peace blooming in her chest. Back in the city, life returned to normal. In the office, Amber greeted Julia and Mia with a nod, shared a quiet smile with Haley, and met Ryan's gaze without regret or longing, only gratitude for what had been and what had not come to pass. Sometimes, Amber would catch the eye of a new colleague, tall, with a mischievous grin, and wonder about the possibilities. But now, she felt strong enough to resist temptation, to build something lasting with Mark. Her story was not perfect, but it was hers. She had faced the truth, survived the storm, and found her way back to love. And that, she realized, was more than enough.